There's a fear that many of us carry. It's not loud necessarily, not always visible, but it goes bone deep. And it's the fear that if someone truly sees us, then they'll leave. And they won't just walk away politely. They'll disconnect and they'll withdraw and disappear. Emotionally or physically, it doesn't really matter. The message still lands the same. Who you are at your most honest is too much. And this fear is rarely about one moment. It's, I think, shaped over years, from childhood echoes to early rejection, unmet needs, relationships that rewarded performance but flinched at our truth. And every time we learn that safety is in the edits, so we curate and then we shapeshift and we shrink and we adjust our tone and our hobbies and our stories and our needs. And we do all this not because we're manipulative, but more so because we're terrified of what honesty might actually cost us. And the cost really feels existential because connection is not just a luxury, it's a lifeline. It's the nervous system interpreting emotional abandonment as danger or the threat of losing love, even perceived love, which feels like death to the parts of us that once needed closeness to survive. So we learn to stay close by disappearing, not physically, but more so emotionally. And we disappear behind competence, behind service, behind humor, behind sex, intelligence, spiritual language, ambition, and even helpfulness. And we let others love the mask that we wear, because if they love the mask, then maybe they'll stay. See, that's the lie that keeps us feeling safe, right? The lie that also keeps us small. And for a while, it works, right? We build relationships and friendships and careers and a whole reputation, and we become indispensable. We become inspiring. We become everything to everyone except for being real. Because real feels like a risk that we cannot afford. Real is like crying when we're supposed to be composed. Real is like saying, I don't know, when we're known for having all the answers usually. Real is admitting loneliness when we're praised for our independence. Real is asking for something more when we've always been the ones who are giving and giving. And here's the quiet tragedy in all this. The more we perform to preserve connection, the more disconnected we tend to feel. I mean, we get what we wanted, and that is that they stayed, but we don't feel safe because deep down, they don't really know us. They only know the version that we've manufactured for their comfort. And then the spiral begins, right? If I take off the mask, will they love the real me? If I stop performing, will anyone really even stay? Or if I let them see me, like all of me, will I be rejected? Maybe the scariest question is this: do I even know who I am underneath all of this? At Uber Bintegers, I want to define intimacy as intimacy. But that kind of intimacy can only happen when we believe that we're safe to be seen in the first place. And for many of us, we've never really had that. Or if we did, it was a fleeting moment, right? So we live in this emotional fragmentation. We're longing to be known, but we're terrified of being left behind. And so we justify it. We say, it's not worth the risk, right? We say, I don't need that kind of closeness if that's the cost. We say, I'm just going to be strong. But it's not strength. It's more so of a strategy, a brilliant and adaptive strategy, but a heartbreaking one too, where we preserve love at the cost of truth. And I mean, this makes sense, right? It's worked. It may still be working, but we're here now. And something inside of us is stirring because we're tired. We're tired of curating connections. We're tired of fearing honesty. We're tired of wondering if we're only loved for the version of ourselves that we've designed. And maybe we're actually ready for something that goes deeper, right? Not safer, but something more true. The kind of love that meets us in our wholeness. But to receive that, we have to risk something that most of us have been taught to really avoid. And that is, we have to risk being seen. There's a difference between being liked and being loved, right? See, being liked, it often comes from performing, from pleasing, or from adapting, or from knowing what's expected and then delivering that flawlessly. But being loved, that comes from being known fully, imperfectly, messily. For many of us, being known is where the terror really lives. Because what happens when we stop performing? What happens when we stop smiling through our discomfort, and when we stop agreeing when we actually disagree? Or when we stop pretending that we're okay when we're hurting? What happens when we let someone see us in our full emotional landscape? Not just the tidy parts, but also the conflicted and the unfinished, hard to love parts about ourselves. See, for decades, I lived inside this fear. It's not because I wanted to deceive anyone, but because I'd learned very early that people respond to the version of me that was polished and responsible and high capacity, the version that read people's needs in real time and exceeded their expectations even before they voiced whatever it was. I don't think this was manipulation as much as it was survival, and eventually became my currency. If I gave people what they wanted, then I would be accepted. If I exceeded what they wanted, then I would be celebrated. But underneath the celebration was this silence, a silence of unspoken interests, of stifled emotions, of a self that was constantly editing just so that I could avoid rejection. See, the real me, like my passions, my quirks, my pain, my boundaries, they didn't feel safe to bring forward because the equation was very clear to me. Authenticity equals risk, and risk equals potential abandonment. And so I became the version of myself that others adored, but rarely ever knew. And I mean, this worked for decades until it didn't, because being celebrated for the version of myself that wasn't me began to feel like I was being erased. A quiet betrayal, if you will, of my own aliveness, a life that looked full on the outside, but echoed loneliness on the inside. And this is the paradox I think so many of us live in. We've built connections that we don't feel safe inside of. And we've cultivated these relationships that reward our silence. We've become like experts at being loved for who we are not. And the fear is always humming beneath the surface. That is, if I let them see me, then the celebration will surely stop, right? The closeness will disapparaate, or the love will disappear. But here's what we rarely consider, I think. The love that we're receiving now isn't actually really for us. It's for the role we've been playing, the utility, the functions that we've been in the midst of. And if we stay inside that role, yeah, we may never be rejected, but we'll never really be held either. We'll always be in the room, but always feeling that sense of aloneness. And here at Uber Bintegers, this is where I want to do my most vulnerable work with y'all. That's naming the false safety of being celebrated for our performance, but then helping people come back to ourselves. Teaching that integrity isn't about being perceived as good, as much as it is about living in alignment with who we truly are. And here's a courageous and brave truth that's hard to hear. if someone leaves you for being real, they were never with you in the beginning. They were with the story or the script or the image that you had agreed to keep performing. And that loss, while it may be painful, is also quite clarifying because it clears the stage for something that's more honest, something that's more mutual, something that's more sustainable. But if we don't, like, the thing we have to remember in the midst of this is we don't have to rush into it. This kind of change really takes time. It takes patience and self-compassion and emotional safety. And we begin this by noticing the moments where we are tempted to shrink. The moments that we change our opinion like mid-sentence just so that we can stay in that light zone, right? The moments that we swallow our truth that really needed to come out into the open air. The moments that we held back a need because we thought it would make us feel like we're too much. And so we begin to gently interrupt these moments, not with aggression, but with truth. And we say things like, this is hard to say, but, or I'm scared to name this, but I need to. Or I don't know how you're going to respond to this, but here's what is real for me in this moment. See, when we say these things, this is where the shift begins for us. Not because the world suddenly became a safe place, but more so because we've stopped abandoning ourselves and we've started to choose truth over performance. And the people who will meet us in this space here, in our truth, those are our people. We don't talk enough about how lonely it is to be surrounded by people who don't really know us, right? I mean, they like us, yes. They enjoy our company, sure. And they may depend on us and even celebrate us. But this is part of us, and that's like the truest part of us that's never actually been invited into the room. And so we keep one foot out the door of every relationship we get into. Not literally, but more so emotionally, right? Because if we've never been fully seen, then we've also never been fully with anyone. We've only been near them, connected through the roles, right? Connected through usefulness, but not through presence, not through vulnerability, and not through like the sacred moment of saying things like, here I am. This is all of me. The parts that you love, yes. The parts that you probably wouldn't expect from me, and also the parts that I'm trying to love myself. See, that moment is terrifying because even the healthiest person can flinch when we drop the act. Even the kindest of people can hesitate when our humanity disrupts their image of us. And we know this because we've seen this, haven't we? We've watched people pull away when we're being honest. We've felt the silence after we said something that was too real. And we've tasted the sting of not knowing how to hold what we finally dared to share. So we adapt and we become likable and predictable and easy to hold. And the truth gets heavier. To always be the one who adjusts, to always be the one who reads the room instead of revealing ourselves, to always be the one who says, what will make them stay, instead of asking, what's real for me? See, the weight adds up over time. And eventually that weight starts to fracture us because we can't keep hiding and still expect to feel whole. And even if no one else sees the cost, we do. We know what it's like to leave conversations feeling just a little bit emptier, right? We know what it's like to feel celebrated and invisible at the same time. Like we know what it's like to miss our own selves even while we're being loved by others. So how do we start coming back? How do we risk being fully seen without spiraling into the fear the moment someone hesitates? Well, we begin by choosing integrity over image, right? Not all at once, and not with everyone, but somewhere. Perhaps we tell one friend what's actually been going on beneath our "I'm fine" phrase, right? Maybe we say no to something that we normally agree to just to keep the peace, right? Maybe we admit even to ourselves that we're not okay pretending anymore. These are not big moves, but they are sacred ones. Because each small act of truth telling makes intimacy possible. Not instant intimacy per se, but potential intimacy. The kind of intimacy that builds over time through consistent and honest engagements, through the risk of not being liked so that we can be loved, right? And here's the thing that most of us miss. The right people don't leave when they see the real us. The right people are the ones who lean in. The right people are the ones who say, thank you for showing me that I want to know more of you. The right people might even say, oof, that's hard for me to hear, but I'm still here. And it's true, people will most likely leave, not because you're too much, but because they've never learned how to hold more than the version of us that made them feel comfortable. So in those settings, let them go in peace. Let them exit the space that they only knew how to occupy through our performance. But as you let them go, let yourself stay. Let yourself stay with your truth and stay with your fullness. Let yourself stay with the version of you that does not need to contort to be kept. Because that version, that's the version of you who deserves true connection. It's not the mask, not the echo, not the helper or the hero of the version that you'd always been posing, but just you. The whole messy, tender, vulnerable, true you. See, the greatest heartbreak is not always being rejected. I think sometimes the greatest heartbreak is really never being truly known. Because even if people stay, if they stay connected to the version of us that we think that they want, we still feel alone. And that kind of loneliness, it does not go away with attention. It does not dissolve with praise. It can't be cured by being liked. The only thing that heals that kind of loneliness is being met in a full, honest way where you're not editing yourself. But we only get to be met when we choose to be revealed. And that choice is never easy. It takes courage that we're not sure we may have. It takes patience with our own trembling voice. It takes this willingness to say, here I am, even if it changes how you see me. But here's what we learn along the way. Some people, yes, will leave, not because you're unworthy, but because they were never truly there to begin with. They were only present for the version of you that they needed. And once our wholeness emerged, our boundaries, like for example, or our uncertainty, our grief, our inconvenient truths, it's then that they choose comfort over connection with us. And that can hurt. But like I said, it clarifies a lot too. Because those who remain, those who choose us in our truth, and who say, me too, when we stop pretending and start sharing genuinely without any performance, those people are gold. They are rare. They are the ones for whom intimacy with was made. See, at Uber Bintegers, this is where I want to return again and again, where we experience intimacy through integrity. Not just saying the right thing, but also living in a way that reflects who we truly are. Not just building relationships that look good, but relationships where we can actually be real. And it's slower this way, yes. It takes more time to build. But the thing is, it doesn't collapse the moment you stop performing. Because it never was built on performance, was it? It was actually built on you choosing to be courageously present. And that's what we're reaching for. I think that's the first step. And it doesn't seem so dramatic. It's not spilling everything to everyone, right? It's pausing and asking, where am I hiding? Or who am I editing myself for? Or what parts of me only come out when I'm alone? And then slowly and gently inviting those parts to the surface. Not for all to see, just for someone safe, someone steady, someone who might even be you for starters. And we begin to rebuild our lives around truth and not tolerance. And we stop earning affection through effort. And we stop curating connection through code switching. And we stop fearing that our reality is too much. And we remember, being fully seen is not a liability. It's really the doorway to love. And yes, it will filter out the people who only wanted your performance, but it'll also make space for those who are finally and truly here for us. And isn't that what we wanted all along, though? Not just to be liked, but and not even just to be impressive, but to be held in the full weight of who we are. See, that's not weakness. That's not indulgence. That's what I call intimacy. And we are so worthy of that. Not someday in the future distance. Not even when we're feeling like we can be better, but now, as we are right here. My dear listener, let me know how this episode landed for you. I'd love to hear if it resonated, if you have anything by way of questions that I can clarify. Let me know in the comments below. See you in the next round.